And I will turn that over to Dr. Nicholas.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So let's start our first award will actually be presented to one of our assistant principals.
And I will turn that over to Dr. Nicholas.
You good? Okay. So the first award, we would like to recognize Chandra Phillips, who is our associate principal at Seaford Central Elementary School. This year, 2022, Chandra has been named a National Outstanding Assistant Principal for the state of Delaware. So Chandra will be able to represent Delaware and also Seaford in June at a conference that takes place in Delaware. She will also attend the national conference for elementary principals in July, which is in Kentucky. And she's a great representation, not just for Seaford, but for the state. Thank you, Chandra. So I guess everyone is here to see Chandra. Hey, that is a posse you got here. That's good. You want to speak us up? The next award that we would like to recognize actually one of our students. Sierra Holmes of Seaford High School in the Seaford School District received the Herman M. Holloway Senior Memorial Scholarship, which honors the first African-American state senator in Delaware. This scholarship is awarded to one student each year enrolling full-time at Delaware State University. Sierra will major in nursing.
We gotta get a present.
Look, I did that on purpose. I said, I also, our next awards, they're all together, and the introduction of our mental health panel. So a very important mental health discussion took place on Saturday, April 30th, that was co-chaired by Dr. Julius Mullen and First Lady Quillen Carney, and involved some of our very own staff and students. The summit, titled Youth Empowerment, the Power of Voice and Choice to Overcome Trauma, featured Mr. Juwan Mullen as a co-host for the event, and who also serves as a social worker at Seaford High School, and three of our students, Asaya Malik, Sierra Holmes, and Cassandra Uri, who are all 12th grade students at Seaford High School. So the students have shared valuable information on how schools can improve resiliency services and support our students' social and emotional well-being. So they were, again, great representations for Seaford. I want to thank the staff for doing that for Seaford, as well as our students. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Great job.
Pass that over. Mr. Tall here.
This is. Going on that side or this?
That's a good night.
Okay.
We'll make it work.
All right. Great job.
I need a height, man. That's what I need.
All right, thank you. Sure. All right, our next presentation will be Superintendent Communications. I'll turn it over to Dr. Nichols.
Great, thank you. So I do have some updates for the board. And one is actually something we got from Donna Polk at the Department of Education and DIAA. And she actually shared with us a report that she received from some officials of a baseball game. And the whole, we were playing Milford, and the umpire said this report goes to both teams from plate umpire. Both teams competed and interacted well amongst each other. Both teams were respectful to the umpires. No questions or complaints were raised by either team for even as much as a ball or strike call. Lastly, I want to express that both the other umpire and himself were both greeted with several thank yous from the Seaford fan base as we were walking out despite their team losing. So just something to share. We know that if you're watching anything local news, national news, sometimes the abuse that umpires and referees are experiencing, it gets ugly. But I know even when I attend some of the baseball and softball events that people are engaged, they enjoy their time, but they're always very respectful, even in the most heated games. So it's just great to see that report. Some really great news for our district. And just some highlights here. So we've been working on this for several years. A lot of different individuals were involved, from school nurses, all directors, Dr. Bell, Sharon, Megan. I'd say the bulk of district staff have been working on trying to get a wellness center at the elementary level in the district for a while. Luckily, the news I have is in partnership with Nemours, Frederick Douglass Elementary School has been awarded a high-needs school-based health center. The goal is for the program to be operational in January of 2023. So there's going to be $125,000 available for the district for one-time capital improvements for Seaford, and also some base funding to operate this. So the neat part, even though it's going to be housed at Frederick Douglass, Seaford's going to utilize a hub and spoke model of service. So Fred Center will be the hub, and the 3 other elementary schools will be the spokes to be opened at a later date. This model of care was developed to expand care and services to other students within the school district. So one of the first, I think the first district, or school district in the state to be able to pull off wellness centers came out of Colonial School District. And they've had these for a few years. And they've had some bumps, but just like anything else, it's nice when someone else can pave that path for you. So we're really excited. We know there'll be great partners in helping us out, but the services we can provide our families, whether it be trauma care, mental health care, school nursing care, it's just really it's big for the district. We've also worked with our current wellness center at the high school because we just noticed a need over the year that some of our middle school families struggle to get physicals. So a lot of these students who want to be involved in sports couldn't. So we figured out a way to have this wellness center be able to help middle school students with physicals, which should really help increase participation. So that's in the works as well. But I did want to share that with the board. We knew about it for some time. It wasn't official. June 1st is when they actually come on site to meet with us. So we get to, really talk through a lot of the plans, but it's really exciting. Last week, a charter network called KIP came on site to visit actually Blades and Central to take a look at some of the bookworms in action. And they've heard about some of the work that's being done in our schools and the achievements the last 2 years with students being able to read on grade level and some of the performance on state assessments. So they came to check out the program in action, and we actually received another follow-up email today just thanking us, and they decided to adopt the program. They're going full bore, and it's just great to see that in essence, we were probably the leaders in this, adopting this program, and so many others are now jumping on board. We also, last week, this actually with the help of Dr. DiGirolamo, the Nanticoke Senior Center held an autism awareness bake sale on April 8th. Proceeds raised were donated to the Seaford School District Autism Program and the Nanticoke Senior Center Seniorship Program. So there was a picture of this on our website, and they presented us a check of $700. So I do want to thank the Nanticoke Senior Center and that work. That was great. And also, I think Mr. Cameron posted this as well, but we have Secretary Holodick posted the senior scholars, and we have 2. And they are Sierra Holmes, who that's, I think, her 3rd award tonight. So she's on fire. And also, let's make sure, Yerladin Torres Landeros. So I want to congratulate those students on their work and being great examples and representation for the Seaford School District. And that's the updates I have.
Very good. A lot of good things going on, a lot of awards and presentations and so forth. It's great.
Yeah.
And it's great that we're gonna get that wellness started in the elementary. That's
Yeah.
Great news.
Really
Great.
exciting.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols. Next item is board communications. Tonight I have 3 items I'd like to cover with the board. The first one is the legislative committee meeting that we had that I chair, and we had on April the 27th. I think I've said this before, there's a lot of bills that in this session, and they're keep popping up daily, I can tell you, because last week we had one that happened right after our meeting, and this week we have another one, and they're putting them out like bread or something, I don't know. Anyhow.
Coming fast.
The problem is a lot of them, they're not thinking out. A lot of ifs about them too, is a problem too. But anyhow, on April 27th, we had a legislative committee meeting. The committee reviewed previous positions on House bills, but there were no position changes were recommended or considered by the committee. And at that meeting, then we reviewed the new House bills with the positions approved as follows. And I'll try to run through these as quickly as I can. And if you have any questions about any of these, don't hesitate to ask. I'll try to find the answer if I don't know, or get you a copy. You can go online and see these bills online also. House Bill 300, we took a support position. This bill established mental health service units for Delaware middle schools. This bill is very similar to the bill that we supported for the elementary schools. House Bill 301, we took a support position. This bill increases student awareness of mental health by requiring DOE to establish and implement statewide mental health educational programs for K through 12 grades. House Bill 312, we took a support position. This bill creates a Delaware personal income tax credit not to exceed $500 per year per individual for interest paid on student loans. House Bill 315, we took a support position for that bill. This bill provides unit funding for full-time employees who shall be hired to provide permanent substitute teaching support in Delaware schools. This is a real good thing. House Bill 318, support position. This bill amends Title 14 of the Delaware Code relating to the licenses for deployed active duty, active reserve, and National Guard military personnel. House Bill 319, we took a neutral position on this bill. This bill proposes an amendment to Article of Delaware Constitution relating parental rights. I think the main reason that we took a neutral there is because we don't want to get involved with the Constitution that plays into other people's hands. But we didn't want to say that we didn't want to support it. And so that's why we took a neutral. House Bill 336, we took a support position. This bill proposes an amendment to Title 14 of the Delaware Code relating to the basic salary schedule for school-based physical therapists. And then following that, there was House Bill 348 that we took a support position. This bill proposes an amendment to Title 14 of the Delaware Code relating to the basic salary schedule for school-based physical and occupational therapists. House Bill 352, we took a support position. This bill relates to charter school application and modification approval. It would permit a new charter school application to be denied by DOE and the state board based on solely on the impact of that charter school. House Bill 353, I told you there was a lot of bills. Support position. This bill amends the laws of Delaware relating to charter schools in Newcastle County. House Bill 377, we took a support position. This bill amends Title 14 of the Delaware Code relating to early childhood education. It requires DOE to conduct an annual workforce study of early childhood professionals to support the development of a plan and implementation of a system of support to grow early childhood workforce. House Bill 304, we took a support position. This bill amends Title 14 of the Delaware Code relating to reading competency for grades K through 3. Then we moved to and reviewed previous positions on Senate bills at the meeting. No position changes were recommended or considered by the committee, but we did review some new Senate bills and took positions approved as follows. The first Senate bill is Senate Bill 232. We took a position of opposition on that. We opposed it. This bill relates to the assessment of civic knowledge bill, calls for yet another assessment or test on civic knowledge. In other words, they testing their knowledge after taking the civics course in the high school. We oppose that. We already had too many assessments as it is. Students spend more time taking tests than they do in doing other things that they should be doing. Senate Bill 1 to Senate Bill 4, we took a neutral position. This bill relates to evidence-based reading curricula. It must be noted that there was significant discussion around DSBA not supporting bills that upset local authority on curriculum. Senate Bill 241, we took a neutral position. This bill relates to disabled veterans school tax credit. Senate Bill 248. We took opposed position. This bill relates to county taxes and taxation of structures used for agriculture. The estimated tax revenue loss to districts was discussed in detail, with it being clearly noted that there is a desperate impact on districts. They want to give farming and agricultural buildings a tax credit, which in this area, of course, Sussex County, it might not affect too many in Newcastle County, but they do have some, but not the amount that we have. And if you look at the amount of money that we would lose in that, even though that we're a small district, it is a big dollar thing that we would lose. So we could not support that bill. That's a meeting that we had, but I also want to bring to your attention two bills that have come out since our legislative meeting. Last week, House Bill 396, and what we do here, we poll our participants or the members of the committee and get their opinion, and they send back to John, and then he takes what that might be and then goes to legislative hall with our decision. This is House Bill 396. This bill would take away the reporting of the AG office to the districts regarding arrest or charges of a student. In other words, offenses that are out of school. DSBA feels this would hinder districts' ability to this, making sure that our students and staff are safe and secure at all times. We need to know these things when they happen so that we can take the necessary measures to make sure that our staff and students are secure and safe. So we sent in our opposition to it. John took it to the committee. They tabled it. So it probably won't pop up again until next year. This week, there was another bill. This was Senate Bill 287. This bill relates to the Newcastle County Voluntary School Assessment, VSA. Statutes that generate impact fees on new residential housing development for Newcastle County schools. John sent out a notice about this. He said he would strongly oppose it. Everything that I've seen sent in the last couple of days, because he's going to go to the committee tomorrow with our opposition to this bill. And of course, we are hoping that it will be tabled and not come out of committee. Because what this bill does too, it changes, we don't have impact fees in Sussex County, but this bill is going to try to put those things in there. And Kent County has their own, it's different from Newcastle, but there are a lot of things in this bill that's going to change things related to those impact fees, and we definitely do not want that or support it. So that was for the most recent bills that we got had. The next item I want to bring up to date on is the Board of Directors meeting for May the 4th. We went through the treasurer's report and DSBA's and solid ground in every aspect. Let's see, I just want to try to hit the highlights here. The minutes from the legislative committee meeting that I just went over were approved by the Board of Directors at that meeting on May the 4th, and they agreed with all the positions that we took, so they did not recommend any changes there. Under old business, Dr. Marinucci provided a brief update to the Board of Directors regarding the NSBA annual convention in San Diego. And we had a strong turnout for the Delaware dinner. He said that function in San Diego. Under new business, The dues calculation for fiscal year 23 were presented and discussed. And John pointed out, and the leadership agreed to this when we had our meeting before, the dues will be reduced again. If you remember, dues were reduced quite a bit last year. We changed the index factor, but they are going to be reduced even lower this year. Also, John went over the operating budget and presented that to us, and that was approved. The meeting schedule for next year for when we have board of director meetings and legislative committee meeting was approved. John is preparing for the boot camp for the newly elected board members that are coming on board from the election that we had last week, I guess it was. And President Ackerman also talked about DSBA and adding speed involvement, whether we continue membership. No vote was actually taken, but all was there. Agree that we should still belong to NSBA. And in fact, we got a notice today from John that he has received the bill for the dues that we have to pay for NSBA. And he asked us if we were still online to go along with that, and all the leadership said yes. And then the last thing that they did that evening, they presented and voted on the slate of officers for next year. Ralph Ackerman from Brandywine will be on the slate for president. Janice Hanwell from Cape will be the first vice president. Jason Casper from Red Clay will be the second vice president. And myself will be the treasurer and legislative committee. Those slate of officers will be voted on at our next board of directors meeting, which is June the 8th. Does anybody have any questions on that? All right, the third item, I said I had 3 items. The third item. I look back at last year's board meeting at this time when we did self-evaluation, and I had 3 items there also. I had legislative committee and board of directors and the board self-evaluation. In your folders, you should have a copy of the bar graph for last year and the bar graph for this year, so that you can compare. And I will be comparing as I give a brief report here. Also, you have an itemized list of all the questions and how those were voted on. Remember, each question has, since there are 5 members on the board, has the possibility of getting 20 points, and then we take the average. So there are 7 categories that are on this evaluation. Category A is relationship with superintendent, B is community relationships, C is board meetings, D is staff and personnel relationships, E is relationship to instructional program, F is relationship to financial management of schools, and G is personnel qualities. If you look at and compare the 2 tables, you will see that the highest category this year is category F, relationship to financial management of schools. It received 3.53. The lowest category was A, relationship to student superintendent. That had a 3 as an average. Categories C, E, and F increased this year over last. If you look at that, categories A, D, and G decreased a little bit over last year. And category B stayed the same as last year. I believe it was 3.18. With that, from last year's report, I believe I recommended that we needed to spend some more time on community relationships. which was category B, and category F, relationship to financial management of schools, because those were the two categories that were kind of lower last year. Well, this year, category B, we stayed the same. And category F, it became the highest one, as it was calculated on the B stayed the same. Was it?
Yeah, something, 18 and 30.
Let's do this something. I thought it stayed the same.
Last year was 3.18, this year's 3.30.
Oh, yeah, they do it. That's good. I missed that, or else I must have had it different. Okay, my mistake. I'm sorry about that. So we kind of put together and did our work and made some improvements in over what we had to do, what was recommended from last year. In summary, for this year, I think the board overall effectiveness relative to the categories of the self-evaluation are positive, and all categories, are rated 3 or above. I do feel that we still need to work on category A, relationship with superintendent, and category B. It did improve, but it's not going to hurt us to improve on that. And that means what other one would we possibly look at? Well, the next lowest one would be relationship to instructional. So we'll stick with just, we need to work on the category A. Overall, I'm happy with the results and what it shows, that we are all here working together, and I think we're a very effective board. We're all here working for the same reason, making sure that our priorities and goals for all students of the Seaford School District are being met. So in conclusion, like I said, I was pretty much satisfied with that evaluation. Does anybody have any questions? That's all I have for board communication, unless someone else has something else they want to mention. Okay. The next presentation is 6.04. Recognition for accomplishments. If you remember, I think it was back in November of last year, we approved a policy relating to this policy AEB. And I will turn it over to Dr. Meckles to start the discussion on this particular policy.
Okay, so I think the board received an email from Ms. Law Savage. She is unfortunately not able to be here tonight, so I'm not sure if you had a chance to take a look at that. But some of what I want to go over with the board, and I think this conversation is going to need to continue in June. But just to remind everyone what the policy actually states. The Seaford School District Board of Education, when it deems appropriate, may recognize outstanding achievement, service, and significant contributions to the educational community with the presentation of awards, certificates, or other manners of recognition. All recognitions intended as a permanent fixture that recognizes a special interest or cause shall be approved by the board on a case-by-case basis. No recognition shall be constructed or placed solely for the purpose of advertising a special interest or cause. No recognition shall contain religious symbols, verbiage, or references. So again, that was adopted 11/15/2021. And this, we talked about this, I'm pretty sure, but basically the statement from Ms. Savage's laws. It starts with in 1954, the Supreme Court case of Brown versus the Board of Education ruled that racial segregation in school was unconstitutional. Although it would take some time, the schools in the Seaford School District would eventually desegregate. In the 1960-1961 school year, escorted by police and surrounded by protesters, 3 students, Carol Cook Kellum, Alvin Cook, and Samuel Jones, courageously entered Central Elementary as the first African-American students to integrate the building. The Central 3 opened doors of equity and inclusion for countless future generations of Seaford students. In the 2012-2013 school year, Seaford School District alumnus Chandra Stewart Phillips became associate principal at Central Elementary, the first African-American administrator in that building. Her mother is Carol Cook Kellum, one of the Central 3 who integrated that very building. In the span of one generation, African-Americans went from being denied entrance to the school to being in a leadership position. This is a historic achievement of which our district should be extremely proud. It is a story that should be told for generations of Seaford School District students and staff to come, but especially those who walk the halls of Central Elementary. So with that said, one idea that Ms. Savage wants to talk to the board about is commission a permanent marker to honor the Central 3 who desegregated Central Elementary, which also signifies that the daughter of one of the Central 3 became the first African-American administrator in that very building. So that, to me, is the discussion for the board to think about, ask questions. I think tonight's a great night to bring it up, but I really would like Ms. Savage to talk it through at the next meeting and start talking about it. Of course, forward. Any comments or thoughts?
I think we should move forward with it.
Well, we've been talking for a while. I do think it would be appropriate to have Sarah here. I know that she tried to take for as much of her thoughts as she could. But I know we've been talking about this now for, help me out, couple, pre-pandemic? Was it pre-pandemic?
I think so.
Is this something the board, a few meetings ago, we looked at some examples for Hurley Field. Is this something we should begin to take a look at and at least be able at the June meeting, at least maybe show some ideas?
Yeah, I think her email had a couple.
Yeah.
Of ideas as well.
Does that make sense? That's the next step.
I mean, I think we should move on this one recommendation about the plaque in the Central Elementary. I think we should. I know that was the first one
Yeah.
that was brought to our attention, and I think we need to eventually, at the appropriate time, but I think Ms. Savage ought to be here
That's right, yeah.
to move ahead with that. So,
So what we could do next time is have a presentation, take a look at some examples, and then have an agenda action to move forward.
to be on the agenda for June.
June, yeah.
Who's gonna do that? Is that my phone down? He's already writing it down. You know, you gotta go ahead and assign people.
He's giving me eye contact already. He's got connections. Okay.
Okay, any other questions or discussion on that? Okay. All right, the next 6.05 DFD, gate receipts and emissions. And I will turn that over to Mrs. Brennan.
Good evening. So this policy, there's mention of both gate receipts and admissions, and in it right now, they're commingled. And what we are doing and what we are proposing to do is really separate admissions, and that would still be maintained by the principal or designee, and gate receipts, which would become the oversight of the athletic director or designee. That is what the proposed changes in this section of policy are.
Any questions? later on, we'll take action for the first reading of that. Let's see, 6.06 is DFC E 2, community use of school facilities, and that is Doug. Mr. Henry.
Yes. Basically, what we're asking is, that board to consider, raising the facility service charges for the district, and there's a few reasons behind that is, we're predicting right now that our energy costs will go up at least $60,000 from what we paid this year till next year because of rising costs and everything. And you know, utilities themselves. So we're predicting that, and then we've also done a lot of upgrading to our auditoriums, gymnasiums and stuff like that. So we're kind of thinking that our facilities are a better place to use now, and rentals are actually went up in space. So what we're looking at is like a 33% increase. So we're looking at going from basically our auditorium right now at the high school to $100, we're going to $150. Middle school auditorium, we're going from 45 to 60. High school gymnasium, we going from 65 to 90, and so on. So we're also looking at adding a few things at the bottom there as far as cost of labor. And now that we have a great technology supervisor, we can actually, you know, loop that into the lighting and the technology support part of it. So we're going to put that in the verbiage, as so somebody would know when they're paying these things that they would have to do that. Another kudos out to our departments or nutrition services, the catering that she's doing now is outstanding. So we also want to put that verbiage in there that we can charge for that type of stuff too. So and like I said again, the main reason for it is the cost of everything. But however, we Megan and myself and Amy Steele basically went out and look through every district that's surrounding us, basically, at what they're charging, and we're still competitive with them, so we're not putting ourselves in this predicament where we, you know, we're outraising ourselves or anything like that. So, basically, that's all I got. Unless you guys got a question.
I have a question in regards to the football field.
Okay.
We have youth football programs now that we once didn't have. And it would be really nice to have our teams represented. When they're playing their opponents right now, they're playing elsewhere, either they're traveling or they're playing at the Jays Nest.
Yeah, and I
How do we,
I tried last year to really get them in there. The thing that's really holding us up right now is they have to pay for police presence there, and that costs them. And then one team is having trouble getting insurance, and we have to have that insurance, you know what I mean, like, to cover our district, to cover the district. So those are the two things that kind of fell through last year. But believe me, I'm trying all I can to get these kids over there, because I think that ties them in to our programs. You know, like if we can get the Pop Warner kids playing there on Saturday, that would be outstanding. So Corey and I, you know, we've worked and done what we can to try to get them over there. And now that Quillen's here, I'm hoping that he can help pull some strings and do some things too. Maybe we'll continue to try what my answer is on that. It's just work with the guys, get some insurance, stuff like that, and the relationship with the city has improved greatly. So, you know, maybe Marshall can help us out with lowering some police calls or something like that also.
let me know if you need to.
Will do. Okay. I appreciate that.
The only question I have is, for people that already have contracts with us, those longer term type contracts, how does will this affect them? Do we have to get a contract, or is there a provision written that it would adjust based on changes to our policy?
So basically, we approved it by the year. So, so when they come up in July, they'll be forced for the new rates. Thank you.
No other questions. Thank you, Mr. Henry.
Mr. Henry, I do have a question.
Yeah.
These rates, do they come with custodial help or?
No, the rates are, the custodial rates are separate.
Understood.
And they range anywhere from, and I'm maybe you can correct if I'm wrong here, but I think it's anywhere from 38 to like $45 per additional to that.
Okay, the next presentation will be 6.07 preschool licensing and tuition. And that, I'll turn that over to Dr. Deeks.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
So our discussion is about licensing and tuition, but I'd like to set the stage by going back a couple of years to review kind of where we started with preschool. Because the expansion, the licensing and the tuition rates are all really part of the same discussion. You've heard Mr. Toll reference legislation coming through regarding the development of early care development. Also nationally, we've heard discussion about that focus on early intervention, universal preschool, all of these things as part of a national conversation. So I think it was pre-pandemic, now this conversation about timeline gets a little fuzzy. But I presented to you maybe a year and a half ago about plans, kind of a 6-7 year plan for preschool. Well, we're now down to about a 4 to 5 year plan, depending on how things go. This past school year, we did add an additional preschool classroom. So you kind of slid that one off the chart here. Going into next year, we will actually continue with the same 4 classrooms. Because the big challenge this year is going to be applying for licensing through the Office of Early Care Licensing. It was something we always planned to do. But now the state has kind of forced our hands because legislation was introduced and passed that requires school districts now to be a licensed early care provider. It used to be that school districts were exempt from that requirement, but moving forward, not so much. It was part of the plan previously because a early care center has to be licensed in order to receive purchase of care, which is the state reimbursement program for eligible families with like the right income guidelines. So moving forward, right now, our tuition rate, even though it is very low, is still out of reach for some of our families because with purchase of care, they might only spend $7 to $10 a week per child. So even $125 a month could be prohibitive. That said, and again, as we talk about increasing our tuition rate, in order to receive the purchase of care reimbursement from the state, we have to have our tuition at a rate that generates that income to then support the care providers, okay? So there's 2 pieces of the puzzle here. We have a program with certified teachers that serves our students with disabilities. We bring in general ed preschoolers or typical peers, as they're commonly called, in order to create a setting that's inclusive and integrated for our preschool students. So there's no question, yes, they generate a little bit through tuition fees, but we're not making money off of that. Basically, those tuition fees right now go back into classroom supplies, preschool graduation, field trips, snacks, diapers, all sorts of things. So we will continue to grow that side of things. The licensing initially was due, was it this summer?
Yes.
Originally, they had licensing, the application was supposed to be due this summer. And there was a little bit of a panic across the state, and so they've now deferred that to next summer. That gives us this next school year to do the licensing application, which is a rather substantial document. And it also gives me an opportunity to work with finance and personnel to figure out, within the context of our current contract, how do we hire early care providers that aren't necessarily teacher certified? They don't have to be teacher certified. They have to have what's called a early care provider. It's a TECE 1 and 2, different one from what our current paraprofessionals have. So we're working together to figure out the logistics of that over the course of this year as we apply for the license. So that's it. Here's the budgetary side. For next year, we already have 40 students registered, students with disabilities, and we're only in May. Typically, we go to September 30th count and we're at about 45. This to me means that this year we're going to have an enormous preschool enrollment. I just do not see it slowing down. We already have 28 general ed preschoolers who are interested in enrolling in Little J's preschool for next year. It's a combination of staff member children as well as community children. We see that number growing a little bit too. So that is very encouraging. For comparison's sake, right now it's $125 a month for preschool. You can see here, I've already projected at $300 a month or $400 a month, what that means annually. And then you can see on that bottom line, the total cost for preschool right now, if you consider all of our teachers and paras, is almost $1 million. Now, some of that is covered through units, regular unit one, no, division one units. Some of it comes out of the IDEA grant. We've used some ESSER money. But the balance not paid through unit count. So the 220, that reflects the amount that comes out of IDEA. ESSER right now, I think that's the bulk of it. So again, if you look at even $300 a month, generating about $75,000, that represents maybe one paraprofessional, if it's salary and OECs and health insurance, or just the salary for a teacher that might be lower on the scale of experience. So, and you see my little caveat at the bottom there, if we didn't have typical peers, maybe there would be less staff needed, but then we don't need an indicator for the state that has to do with our inclusive settings. All right, so if you go to the next. So all that to say, we did meet as a committee of a preschool licensing committee. It consists of parents, teachers, administrators, and we have met bi-weekly initially when we thought licensing application was due this summer. And then once they backed off of that, we've been meeting monthly. But we did a comparison across the state. And the Office of Early Care Licensing is actually kind enough, they do their own study. And you can see that in Sussex County, the minimum charge is $120 per week. And then 19973 zip code, the minimum is actually $160. So they surveyed daycare providers. There was only 7 centers here in the 19973. Obviously, those are centers. These aren't. I'm paying my friend, my neighbor, my mom to watch my kid. These are centers. And then Sussex County was 74 centers, and I would assume that that includes the 19973. I broke it down by hours per week because a daycare center, a public kind of daycare center, is frequently open from 7 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock at night. So I didn't want to compare apples to oranges. So by breaking it down, you get an hourly rate, and you can see that our current hourly rate of $125 goes about 89 cents an hour. So even increasing our monthly rate to 300, we're still well below the 19973, but a closer match to kind of Sussex County. And if you could scroll up a little bit to see the other information. One of the things we talked about as a group is before and after school care. So that difference between a public center and the Little J's preschool, we have regular school hours. Some of our teachers struggle. They come into work, especially at the high school at 7:15, but if preschool doesn't start until 8:45, kind of what do we do? So we were considering, or one of the things we were proposing was to add an additional fee for those staff members who care to enroll in it, not a requirement, for an additional $100 a month. They would be able to access before and after school care. And kind of ease that burden, because our typical peers, our regular education students, don't get transportation. Our staff hours, we're going to change a little bit. We're going to align to central. We've recognized some challenges that had to do with administrative oversight for professional development, nurse coverage, just a sense of community when you go to a staff meeting. The topics for a preschool kind of team attending a high school faculty meeting, there's not quite a a great fit right there. And then with the preschool hours being delayed, they were still teaching when high school faculty meetings and other team events were kind of happening. So there's other things happening in preschool. I did a comparison against Woodbridge and Laurel. I called my colleagues. Their preschools are much smaller. They're just for staff members. Laurel, it's a half-day program. Woodbridge is a half-day program. It's $300 per year for their integrated preschool, but then they pay market rate for the afternoon for daycare. So I'm not sure it's really comparable to what we do. Again, if we go back to the beginning, I think one of the main arguments for establishing a competitive rate so that when we are licensed and we have families eligible for purchase of care, we're being reimbursed by the state at a reasonable rate that then can pay for those staff members, the early care providers that we're hiring outside of regular Division I units. So I know that was a lot, and it's also tied together, that it's hard to talk about expansion without talking about licensing, without talking about the tuition rates.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Once we get, I guess, license or whatever, are you confident that we'll be reimbursed at the Star 5 level so we can get max reimbursement?
Yes, I mean, we were at Star 4
Okay,
previous to, COVID, when they kind of stopped doing the star things. I think Star 5 only, you get Star 5 by being licensed. So, I want us to be a licensed center. I mean, you have to, I don't want to offer that as a service to our families. It's childcare if we're not licensed, the same way you want your teachers to be licensed and appropriately certified in their area. I would want this to be for our preschool. Any
Anything
questions
else?
about the fine print?
sir, no,
I have a great team of people that are working diligently to make this happen, so we shall see.
Thank you, Dr. Lee.
You're welcome.
We will be voting on this tuition later on.
Yes, sir.
All right, 6.08 is GDD-R, which is regulation, support staff vacations and holidays. And I'll turn that over to Ms. Brennan.
If the board allows, I would like to speak to GCD and GDD together.
I'm about to do that. So by all means.
Wonderful. So GCD is the professional staff vacation and holiday. GDD is the complementary piece that is related to support staff vacation and holidays. In terms of the professional staff regulation, this has been updated in both 2014 and 2015. The support staff wasn't updated since 2010. Well, or I'm sorry, 2010. So the first edits were made to really incorporate the support staff changes that were previously made to professional staff into support staff. Then what we did was we incorporated a few other changes. So the first is to really look at the vacation bans and to be competitive with other districts throughout the state. So the bans right now go from 0 to 10 years, and this the edits would bring it down to 0 to 4 years, 5 to 9, and there and so on and so forth. The second change was also to update to include language that based upon a person's funding, that would be how they would be paid out. So I am both a state and a locally funded person. State and local will pay out mine, whether it be my retirement vacation or if I depart from the district, it would be paid out for that. Another change that was made to both of the sections was to remove the 42 days cap on payouts in terms of either retirement or departure. So this is really to bring us in line with the rest of the state of Delaware and also other school districts. They do not have that limit, but Seaford in this regulation did. So those are really the main 4 changes that were made to both sections, and they were made in combination so that assuming each was applicable, they were made across the board.
I noticed you didn't have anything for the board. No vacation project?
I'll look into adding that for next year.
Thank you. We covered 6.08 and 6.09 together there. So we're up to 6.10 summer learning plans, and I'll turn that over to.
Right. Well, this summer, we have some summer learning plans. And we have a comprehensive plan that's going to serve all of our students in different ways. At the elementary level, we really thought about how can we serve our students differently? Because we have a space issue with all of the wonderful work that Delegate Justine are going to be getting done in our buildings this summer. We couldn't use those facilities, so we had to think creatively about how can we still meet the student needs that exist, even though, you know, our buildings are going to be occupied with, you know, wonderful upgrades and things that are very much needed. So we're starting by tiered supports. The first one is we're going to send home and encourage reading and writing all summer long with writing prompts and writing journals and a summer reading challenge using the state of Delaware has provided us with all online digital library of books that students can access, and we're going to really promote this summer reading challenge. We're also going to collaborate with the Seaford Public Library because they put on really excellent programs at the library. And so we're going to partner with them and get as many kids out to those activities as possible. We're going to host several virtual field trips because kids need to experience new and different things. And so we learned during the pandemic that you can go on all kinds of field trips, just looking at your devices. We're also going to do some targeted tutoring that is going to be one-on-one tutoring in public, in person, out in the community, either hosted at the library, and if there are rooms available in our schools, we're going to have tutors working with pre-identified students, and there's going to be a parent contract, and so that they kind of agree to showing up and meeting the tutors. And each of the tutoring sessions, they're going to have focus goals so that they can monitor student progress over the summer through these tutoring sessions. And then we are hoping to offer students who come to the tutoring and participate and engage in that we can offer like an end of the summer kind of field excursion so that we can take them all somewhere and really celebrate their participation in all of these activities. So that's kind of the description of the elementary program. And we hope that we can get lots of teachers and our para-educators involved in tutoring. We're actually kind of hopeful that this tutoring model will be flexible so that our staff don't feel overwhelmed by having a very set schedule. They can kind of work flexibly, make appointments with families, have the tutoring session. So we're going to see how that goes. The secondary model, we also are trying to be really creative to meet student needs. And we've always had a credit recovery course where students come in person. And during the pandemic, we found that a lot of students really enjoyed working. And they preferred to do some online options. So we're gonna try that with credit recovery, and we're gonna, so that way students who have summer jobs and are working can also still catch up on their courses and get on track to graduate. Whether it's a ninth grader who needs to catch up or a senior who needs to finish up so that they can participate in that August graduation. Any student who needs to get, earn some courses will have that opportunity either in person or online. And we'll have staff members who are working specifically with both groups of students here and in person and online, so that they have an adult who's motivating them, checking in on them, and kind of guiding them through the work. So that even if they're in the online option, they won't just be on their own and kind of having to figure it out, but they'll have an adult who is supporting them along the way and helping them to get to the finish line. We also are offering several of our AP courses, are having some boot camps so that they can do some pre-work before they start the advanced placement coursework during the regular school year. And we started that last year and it was very successful. Those were just a 1 week kind of abbreviated summer plan. The students came in, they worked with the advanced placement teacher, and it was really beneficial. We can't wait to see what our AP scores. We're actually currently during testing season for the advanced placement courses. So hopefully as scores come in, we can see good results with that, and we hope to continue that in the future. And then our English learner population is one of the populations that really, when they weren't in in-person instruction, they lose a lot because they're not practicing their English language skills, particularly at the middle school and high school level with those students who arrive later. They have less time to learn English before they're getting towards graduation, and they can quickly fall behind with graduation. So we're working on setting up a tutoring schedule just to even have them practice speaking English and doing some previewing of some of the curriculum so that they can be really successful during the school year. So I'm trying to think if I forgot anything. I don't think so.
On the elementary side,
Mhm.
and if you spoke to it, I didn't hear it, forgive me. Are we doing away with summer school?
We are not doing away with summer, like, a traditional summer school like we did last year. Last year, we had a very robust summer school that we offered at all of our schools, and we bused students, and that was really in response to the pandemic and online learning. Normally, we've had a scaled back summer school, and I don't know if you remember from the previous years where we had staff members going out in the community and meeting the food trucks and offering lessons in the community, and which was kind of like our summer school model. And it was just to promote reading and community engagement. And so this is what we had kind of come up with for this year. As something different. So we've always had our elementary summer learning plan has always been somewhat different than what our secondary plan has been. But this year, we really felt that if we identified students who needed targeted tutoring, that then we could have a greater impact.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we're going to offer that for students in first grade through fifth grade.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move into agenda action items. The first one, 7.01, is DFD, gate receipts and emissions. And we heard about this earlier. Recommended action is to approve the first reading of DFD gate receipts and omissions.
This is Jeff Benson. I make a motion to approve the first reading of DFD gate receipts and admission.
That's Troy Cornell, I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. The next one is DFC-E-2, community use of school facilities. And we also heard of this from Mr. Henry. And recommended action is to approve the fees for community use of school facilities.
This is Kim Hopkins, and I move that we approve the fees for community use of school facilities, which is DFC-E-2, community use of school facilities.
This is Jeff Benson. I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the fees for community use of school facilities, DFC-E-2. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. 7.03 is preschool tuition. Recommended action is to approve preschool tuition.
This is Jeff Benson. I make a motion that we approve the preschool tuition as presented.
That's Troy Cornell,
Second.
Troy Cornell, I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the preschool tuition as presented. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. The next one is the policy that we heard about last week. This would be the second reading, is JHA, out of state athletic travel. You have a copy of that in your folder. So the recommended action is to approve the second reading of policy JIHA, out of state athletic travel.
This is Kim Hopkins. I move that we approve the second reading of policy JIHA, out of state athletic travel.
This is Jeff Benson. I second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Next item is 7.05, school choice. On our agenda, we have 2. Recommended action is to approve school choice applications 2021-22-63 and 2022-23-13.
It's Jeff Benson. I move that we approve school choice applications 2021-22-63 and 2022-23-13.
That's Troy Cornell, I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. .06 is field trips. We have done to approve on the field trip agenda. Moving on, 7.07 is facilities request. On the agenda, you will see that there are 3 events requesting approval. Does anybody have any questions? Recommended action is to approve the facilities request agenda as presented.
It's Jeff Benson. I make a motion that we approve the facility request agenda as presented.
Troy Cornell, I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. 7.08 is financial report. Before we do that, we need to have a report.
So currently, we are 83.3% of the way through the fiscal year. Since last meeting, we have expended or encumbered $770,000. If you look at our total budget, we have expended or encumbered 82.63%. So 83% of the way through the fiscal year, 82.63. We're very much so on track in terms of closing things out on budget. Local salaries continue to be on track. I wanted to point out that a number of the budgets have either between expended and encumbered reached 100%, including West Seaford's, Blades, insurance, operations and utilities, and choice and charter. So there will be no more spending in those areas. The majority of the school budgets, there's very little money left. If there's any money left, that will be for additional subs for water day field trips, events like that, or if they pay for additional SLT positions out of their school budget. In terms of revenue, we have collected an additional $31,395,000 since our last meeting for general expense. We are currently at 102.07%. The one item that will hopefully bump us up a bit next month will be senior property tax relief. And I did email yesterday to find out when we may expect those funds, because I hope to have them recognized for our June meeting. Set aside, we continue to not touch these funds at this time. So moving on to our April 30th monthly revenue report. In terms of state funds, there is actually a net decrease of $30,900. This is due to the fact that state transportation funds were pulled back. We had 6 contracted routes, and because we were not utilizing them, the state took our money back, so that was very nice. But the students are being transported just for other needs. In terms of local funds, we have an additional $437,000 across a variety of different tax buckets. And then in terms of federal funds, we received an additional $48,000. Are there any questions?
Anyone? Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. This is an action item. Recommended action is to approve the monthly financial reports as presented.
Ms. Jeff Benson, I move to approve the monthly financial reports as presented.
Mr. Purnell, I second it.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Long range agenda items. May the 30th, schools will be closed for Memorial Day. June the 3rd is the Seaford High School graduation at 6 p.m. June the 6th is Seaford Middle School 8th grade bridge ceremony. June the 8th is the last student day. June the 9th through June the 13th is professional development days for staff. And we will be back in the boardroom here at 6 p.m. for our June meeting on June the 13th. Is there anything else to add? Not. Moving on, I need a motion to move into executive session.
This is the meeting that we enter into a record session.
Jeff Benson, second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0, and the time going in is 7:21 p.m. I thank everybody for being here tonight. Have an enjoyable evening. Yeah.